Some Jedi Masters leave their mark on the galaxy through grand battles or legendary duels. Others shape history through quiet wisdom and unwavering conviction. Qui-Gon Jinn did both. Before he discovered Anakin Skywalker, before he faced a Sith Lord on Naboo, he was just a boy from Coruscant with an extraordinary connection to the Force. Born around 80 years before the Battle of Yavin, Qui-Gon Jinn came into a galaxy still basking in a golden age of peace. The Republic was strong, and the Jedi Order thrived as its guardians. Like many Force-sensitive children, Qui-Gon was identified early and brought to the Jedi Temple. Life within those ancient walls was different, structured, and full of discipline. Young Qui-Gon was placed into the Helios clan, and alongside other younglings, he took his first steps into the larger world of the Jedi. Under the careful eye of Master Terra Sinub, he began learning the fundamental forms of lightsaber combat training that would one day serve as the foundation for a fighting style powerful enough to face the first Sith Lord seen in 1,000 years. But being a Jedi wasn't just about combat, it was about connection. It was about wisdom. It was about learning to understand the Force. When Qui-Gon turned 12, the moment every youngling both dreams of and fears finally came, he was chosen as a Padawan learner. And not just by anyone, but by the renowned Master Dooku. The night before he left the youngling's crash, Qui-Gon stayed up late with his friends laughing, dreaming of the adventures that awaited them all. He practiced with his training saber, until Master Yaddle finally ordered him to bed. Sleep didn't come easily that night. How could it? Tomorrow would change everything. When he presented himself in Dooku's quarters the next morning, Qui-Gon was terrified not of Dooku, but of failing, of not becoming a Jedi. When Dooku asked him to explain his fear, Qui-Gon looked inward and answered with striking honesty. That self-awareness impressed Dooku, who told his new apprentice that most Padawans would simply deny their fear, lacking the insight Qui-Gon already showed. To help him understand the temple better, Dooku gave him a personal tour. They visited the Padawan sparring dojo and watched Jedi Knights train in more advanced techniques. They explored the Great Assembly Room, where Jedi gathered for important ceremonies. The meditation chambers were interesting, if not exactly thrilling to young Qui-Gon, but the Arboretum fascinated him. There, plants from thousands of worlds lived and grew together. But it was in the Jedi archives where something truly unexpected caught Qui-Gon's eye, on ancient holocron, shaped differently from all the others. When he asked about it, Dooku's expression changed. It contained Jedi prophecies, he explained. But such mysticism had led many Jedi astray, even toward the dark side. For that reason, the Jedi no longer studied prophecy. This was Qui-Gon's first encounter with the holocron of prophecies, but it would not be his last. Just 4 months into his apprenticeship, Qui-Gon faced his first real test. The Council sent him and Dooku to the planet Shutoran, where a battle was raging. As their shuttle approached the planet under heavy fire, Qui-Gon tried to calm his nerves by watching his master for strength. At Primus Space, he met Rayla, first Padawan and a famous lightsaber duelist. While Dooku met with the generals, Rael placed a friendly hand on Qui-Gon's shoulder. But instead of offering battle advice, he gave Qui-Gon something more valuable: a connection. He told Qui-Gon that if he ever had questions he didn't feel comfortable asking Dooku, he could come to him. He even offered to be Qui-Gon's sparring partner. Gratefully, Qui-Gon accepted. In that moment, Rael became a bridge between the Padawan Qui-Gon was and the Jedi Knight he hoped to become. Their relationship would prove more important than Qui-Gon realized. One day, while working on a dull assignment in Dooku's quarters, Qui-Gon got a surprise visit from Rael, seeing the Padawan struggling through a dry report on theosophy. Rael grinned and offered to show him some real history. Together, they returned to the archives and looked at the prophecy holocron that had fascinated Qui-Gon from the beginning. He was hooked. He couldn't stop reading the ancient visions. When Qui-Gon brought up Dooku's warning about prophecy, Rael looked confused. According to him, Dooku had once been obsessed with prophecy. He could barely be pulled away from that very holocron. The revelation puzzled Qui-Gon. Why had his master changed so drastically? During his temple years, Qui-Gon formed deep connections with Jedi of all ranks. He was known for helping new initiates adjust to temple life, displaying the compassion and helpfulness that would become core to who he was. These early experiences shaped his belief in the Force and convinced him that personal connection mattered. Even if the Jedi warned against attachment, around 58 by after years of training, Qui-Gon finally became a Jedi Knight. No longer an apprentice, he was free to follow his own path. And what a path it would be. He was guided not by ambition, but by a deep sense of something he called the living force of philosophy rooted in the present moment, in intuition and connection. That independent streak would one day lead him to challenge the Jedi Council itself, discover a boy with the highest midi-chlorian count ever recorded, and unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy forever. Fanry was only 14 years old and waiting to take the throne of Pial, as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan investigated the group known as the Opposition. They encountered two dual thievespox, Merifa and Rehera Wick. Even though Merifa was openly hostile toward Qui-Gon, they recruited the pair to help uncover the truth behind the terrorists threatening the treaty. As the investigation deepened, Qui-Gon experienced a powerful vision, the treaty signing descending into a bloodbath. When he met with Hale Azuka, the leader of the Opposition, he learned something shocking: they were being framed. Though they had only peacefully protested the treaty, the violent acts pinned on them were committed by someone else entirely. Learning more about the treaty, and how it unfairly favored the Chirka Corporation over the local people, Qui-Gon made a firm decision: he refused to represent the Republic at the signing. Eventually, they uncovered the true culprit, Princess Fanry herself. She had created a military group called the Black Guards and orchestrated the violence to frame the Opposition, all to restore full monarchy to Pijl. At her coronation, she rejected both the treaty and Republic influence. Worse, when she prepared to attack the Chirka ships, despite knowing many aboard were slaves, Qui-Gon was forced to intervene. With help from Obi-Wan, Merifa and Wick, they managed to save the innocent passengers. After resolving the crisis on Pural, Qui-Gon made his decision. He declined the Jedi Council's offer and chose instead to continue Obi-Wan's training. That choice would lead to consequences that neither master nor apprentice could have foreseen. Their most difficult mission came between 41 and 39 BBY, when they were sent to protect Duchess Satine Kryze during Mandalore's civil war. The planet's traditionalist warriors were fighting against a reformist movement called the New Mandalorians, led by Sadani, as she became the target of multiple assassination attempts. The Jedi were assigned to protect her. For a full year, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan remained on Mandalore, constantly on the move with Satine, dodging bounty hunters and mercenaries hired to eliminate her. They lived hand to mouth, never knowing what the next day would bring. During that year, Obi-Wan developed romantic feelings for the Duchess, feelings that Qui-Gon quickly noticed. Despite the Jedi Code's strict prohibition against attachments, Qui-Gon didn't judge his Padawan. He understood. Eventually, the Civil War ended. The new Mandalorians came to power, and Satine became Mandalore's ruler. Though Obi-Wan would have left the Jedi Order to stay with her if she'd asked, she never did. Around 41 years before the Battle of Yavin, Qui-Gon took Obi-Wan on what he described as a training exercise. In truth, he was bringing his Padawan to observe the Wookiee celebration of Life Day on Kashyyyk, in the village of his old friend, Brennan. As they arrived, Obi-Wan was confused about the purpose of the trip. Qui-Gon urged patience, explaining that this was no ordinary training session. He wanted Obi-Wan to focus on the energy of Kashyyyk itself, to feel the force flowing through the entire ecosystem. When Brennan saw Qui-Gon, she embraced him warmly, then welcomed Obi-Wan with the same joy. But their reunion was cut short when they learned that another Wookiee named Balfus had gone missing. Before they could search for him, Trojan hunters attacked the village using nets to capture Wookiees. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fought back, but Qui-Gon was ultimately captured as he was being taken away. He demanded the hunters surrender and told Obi-Wan that the rescue was now in his hands. Taken to the Trojan leader, Korgan, Qui-Gon tried to negotiate for the Wookiees' release, but Korgan wanted Obi-Wan captured as well. When Obi-Wan arrived, pretending to surrender, he used the distraction to free Qui-Gon with the Force. Together, with the help of the Wookiees, they overpowered the outnumbered Trojans and freed all the prisoners. Returning to the village, they finally joined the Life Day celebration as planned. Around 40 by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were operating near a planet that served as a base for a pirate group known as the Fleshmongers. While flying there, Delta 7 Ether Sprite-class interceptors, they received a transmission from Jedi Master Yoda. He was on the planet's surface and needed assistance. Upon landing, they discovered that Yoda had already single-handedly defeated the entire pirate gang to rescue a Force-sensitive infant named Lo. Yoda asked them to escort the child back to the Jedi Temple, assuring Lo that he was in good hands with Qui-Gon, while Obi-Wan was stunned that Yoda had taken out an entire room of pirates alone. Qui-Gon noticed that something was bothering the old master. Yoda admitted he had sensed a disturbance in the Force, something that he felt compelled to investigate, though Qui-Gon offered to join him. Yoda said this was a journey he had to make alone, and departed for the Vagadar system. In 37 BBY, Qui-Gon began to wrestle with internal doubts about the Jedi Order's role in the galaxy. He was disturbed by how many citizens, only on Coruscant, saw the Jedi not as peacekeepers or spiritual guides, but as warriors and political servants. This turmoil came to a head during a mission to the planet Brian, where he and Obi-Wan were sent to negotiate between Priestess Toravud and the Metal Clan. The Metal Clan tried to kill both and Qui-Gon, using it as an excuse to begin cutting down the planet's forests. Qui-Gon protected the priestess and escaped with her to Coruscant. There, Tur demanded that Qui-Gon destroy every member of the Metal Clan in retaliation. When he refused, explaining that this was not the Jedi way, she called him a coward, someone who failed to live up to the legends of Jedi warriors. That accusation shook Qui-Gon, not because she called him a coward, but because she expected him to be a warrior. Seeking clarity, he followed the Force to an unnamed world. Inside a dark temple, he experienced a terrifying Force vision. In it, he fought and killed red-hued humanoids, only to realize they were actually Jedi as he struck them down. Darkness consumed him. The vision showed him that unchecked violence, no matter the cause, would only lead to the dark side. When he awoke, he understood. Balance in the Force couldn't be found through conflict or rigid doctrine. Jedi couldn't give in to the dark. But they couldn't be inflexible either. He returned to Coruscant with a new understanding, and helped Priestess to find a peaceful solution without more bloodshed. These events shaped not only Qui-Gon's views on the Force, but his relationship with Obi-Wan as well. Through all their missions together, diplomatic negotiations, battlefield rescues, palace conspiracies, pirate standoffs, Master and Padawan were forging a partnership that would endure the trials ahead. Though they walked different paths within the Jedi way, their bond would become one of the most important in the entire history of the galaxy. He stood before the assembled masters and delivered his report. First, he described his encounter with the mysterious warrior on Tatooine, stating his belief that the attacker was a Sith Lord. The council members exchanged troubled glances. The Sith-tensioned enemies of the Jedi were believed to have been destroyed 1,000 years ago. Such a claim required extraordinary evidence, but it was Qui-Gon's second revelation that truly tested the council's patience. He informed them that he had discovered a boy with an extraordinarily high midi-chlorian count, even higher than Master Yoda's. What's more, the boy had been conceived without a father, born of a virgin birth. In Qui-Gon's mind, these signs pointed to one possibility. Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one from Jedi prophecy, destined to bring balance to the Force. The Council, already skeptical about the Sith claim, now regarded Qui-Gon with barely concealed doubt still. They agreed to test the boy's Force sensitivity and aptitude for training. As Anakin stood before them, answering their questions and undergoing their evaluations, Qui-Gon waited visibly calm, but inwardly tense. Obi-Wan could sense at his master's rare anxiety, and he worried that regardless of the Council's ruling, Qui-Gon would find a way to train Anakin anyway. The test results confirmed what Qui-Gon already knew. Anakin was incredibly strong with the Force, but instead of embracing this power, the Council made a firm decision. Anakin Skywalker would not be trained as a Jedi, despite his potential. They ruled he was too old to begin the training. Jedi typically started as infants before fear, anger, and emotional attachments could take root. At 9 years old, Anakin was already full of fear, full of anger, and full of attachments, especially to his mother. Standing before the Council, Qui-Gon did something that surprised even Obi-Wan. He challenged their decision directly, insisting that Anakin must be trained. When they refused, he made a bold declaration. He would take Anakin as his own Padawan learner. The Council reminded him that he already had an apprentice, Obi-Wan. But Qui-Gon said Obi-Wan was ready for the Jedi trials. If his current Padawan became a knight, Qui-Gon would be free to train Anakin. The Council, growing weary of his defiance, decided to delay further discussion. Queen Amidala was preparing to return to Naboo to confront the Trade Federation, and they ordered Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to accompany her. The fate of Anakin Skywalker would be decided later as they left the Council chamber. Qui-Gon began giving Anakin preliminary lessons about the Force, clearly intending to begin the boy's training, with or without official sanction. Before departing for Naboo, Qui-Gon had one last meaningful encounter with his former Master Dooku. They met at the temple, and Dooku offered his old apprentice some parting wisdom. Neither of them could have known it would be their final meeting. Eventually, Dooku would leave the Jedi Order, following the invasion of his homeworld Sereno, though Qui-Gon would never live to see it. Dooku would fall to the dark side, becoming the Sith apprentice of Darth Sidious, the very mastermind behind the Naboo crisis. As he prepared for the journey back to Naboo, Qui-Gon felt a strange sense of foreboding. Still, he focused on the task. At hand, the Queen was determined to liberate her people, and she would need all the protection the Jedi could provide. When they reached Naboo, they found the situation worse than expected. The Trade Federation's occupation was complete, and the Naboo people were suffering. Qui-Gon and the others traveled to the swamps, searching for the Gungan army, hoping the natives might help turn the tide. They found the Gungans hiding in a sacred forest area, having retreated after droid armies invaded their cities. It was there that Queen Amidala revealed a stunning truth. The regal figure who had traveled with them to Coruscant wasn't the real queen, but a decoy Padawan, the handmaiden who had accompanied Qui-Gon to Mos Espa was the true queen. She had maintained the deception for security reasons, allowing herself to move more freely and protect her identity. Qui-Gon, however, showed no surprise. He had seen through her disguise from their first meeting, but had respected her strategy and played along. With her identity now revealed, Amidala pleaded with the Gungans to form an alliance against the Trade Federation. Boss Nas, impressed by her humility and courage, agreed. Together, they came up with a daring plan. The Gungan army would lure the droid forces into open battle, drawing them away from the Ed. Meanwhile, Amidala, her security forces, and the Jedi would infiltrate the capital to capture Viceroy Gunray before they departed. Qui-Gon made one thing clear. He would protect the Queen with his life, but he would not fight a war for her. The Jedi were peacekeepers, not soldiers. His and Obi-Wan's duty was to guard the Queen and face any Force-sensitive threats that might appear. Given his earlier encounter with the Sith warrior, Qui-Gon suspected one such threat would indeed appear, and he was right as their strike team entered Theed's main hangar. Darth Maul was waiting for them. The red and black tattooed Zabrak ignited his double-bladed lightsaber. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan stepped forward to face him, while Amidala and her forces moved toward the throne room. What followed was one of the most intense lightsaber duels the galaxy had seen in generations. Maul was a terrifying opponent, trained in ancient Sith combat techniques the Jedi hadn't faced in centuries, his weapon double-bladed. Deadly was designed to intimidate as much as kill, even outnumbered. Maul controlled the battle's flow, leading the Jedi through the palace's power generator complex. Throughout the fight, stayed calm, relying on the living force to guide his movements. He didn't rely on strict forms, he followed his instincts. Obi-Wan, younger and more agile, matched his master's rhythm. The two Jedi working in perfect sync. But then, everything changed. Maul managed to separate the Jedi, knocking Obi-Wan down several levels and activating ray shields that trapped the Padawan behind a force barrier. For critical moments, Qui-Gon would have to face the Sith Lord alone. Through it all, Qui-Gon's unique Jedi philosophy came through. He challenged the Council. He believed in ancient prophecy. He embraced the living force. He had compassion for all beings, from rescuing Jar Jar Binks to fighting for Anakin's future. His independent thinking often clashed with the Jedi and sometimes even with Obi-Wan. But that same independence allowed him to see what others could not. The return of the Sith and the arrival of the Chosen One. As he faced Darth Maul in single combat, Qui-Gon remained true to his path. He did not fight out of hate or fear. He fought to protect others. He didn't seek to destroy, only to defend. The ray shields cycled on and off as Obi-Wan waited helplessly. Qui-Gon used the pause in combat to kneel and meditate, centering himself in the Force. Maul paced impatiently across the barrier when the shield lowered. The duel resumed, this time with greater ferocity. Maul drew deeper on the dark side. Qui-Gon, older and physically taxed, began to slow. Atoru, his acrobatic lightsaber form, demanded energy, and age was catching up to him. Eventually, Maul identified an opening as their sabers clashed. He delivered a sudden strike with the hilt of his weapon, knocking Qui-Gon off balance. In that moment of vulnerability, Maul drove his crimson blade straight into Qui-Gon's torso. The Jedi Master's eyes widened in pain. He collapsed behind the final ray shield. Obi-Wan could only watch, horrified, as his master fell. When the shield deactivated, Obi-Wan charged forward, driven by rage and heartbreak. His fury overwhelmed Maul, forcing the Sith onto the defensive. But raw emotion couldn't carry Obi-Wan for long. Maul countered, disarmed the young Jedi, and knocked him into a pit. Obi-Wan barely caught the edge dangling over death. Maul taunted him from above, scraping his lightsaber to throw sparks at the helpless Jedi. But in that moment, the Sith made a fatal mistake. He underestimated the Force. Obi-Wan focused, reached out, summoned Qui-Gon's Light-Saber. With one leap, he vaulted out of the pit, flipped over Maul, and mid-ignited the blade. In a single, clean strike, he cut Maul in half. The Sith's body tumbled into the abyss. Obi-Wan rushed to Qui-Gon's side, cradling his dying master. He listened as Qui-Gon used his last breath to make a final request. Train the boy. Even in death, Qui-Gon held fast to his belief that Anakin was the chosen one, the key to balance. Obi-Wan, grief-stricken, gave his word. He would train the boy, no matter what the Council had ruled. With that, Qui-Gon Jinn, Jedi Master, Maverick, and Seeker of Truth, became one with the Force. After Naboo's liberation, a Jedi funeral was held. Qui-Gon was cremated with full honors on a ceremonial pyre. The ceremony took place at night, the flames illuminating solemn faces. Queen Amidala, Masters Yoda and Windu, and newly elected Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, who was, in secret, Darth Sidious. Conspicuously absent were Dooku and Jedi Master Yaddle. Unknown to others, Yaddle had followed Dooku to Coruscant, witnessing his secret meeting with Sedusa, meeting with consequences that would reshape the galaxy. As the fire consumed Qui-Gon's body, Obi-Wan stood beside Anakin, and in that moment he shared the news. The Council had changed their minds. Anakin would be trained, whether moved by Qui-Gon's sacrifice or Obi-Wan's heroism. The Council had granted permission. With steady determination, Obi-Wan made a promise. You will become a Jedi. And in that moment, standing before the pyre of his fallen master, Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped into a larger world. He became a Jedi Knight, and accepted the responsibility of training the boy, who might change the galaxy. Qui-Gon's death sent ripples through the Jedi Order. Though he had often defied them, he was remembered as a great Jedi one who had uncovered the Sith's return and discovered the Chosen. His loss was deeply felt by Yoda, by the Wookiees of Kush, YYYK, by the people of Naboo, who built a shrine in his honor, even those who never met him, like Senator Bail Organa, would come to know of his sacrifice. But the most immediate legacy was Obi-Wan's rise to knighthood, and his commitment to carry on his master's final wish. In combat against a Sith Lord, the Council recognized that Obi-Wan had effectively passed the Jedi trials through his actions. This elevation in status allowed him to take Anakin as his Padawan, fulfilling the promise he had made to his dying master. Yet even as the visible consequences of that duel played out, unseen machinations continued in the shadows. Darth Sidious, though momentarily set back by the loss of his apprentice, simply adjusted his plans. Maul would be replaced, and the grand design would continue. The Sith had revealed themselves after 1,000 years of hiding, but the Jedi had only seen the apprentice, not the master pulling the strings. Qui-Gon Jinn had lived as a maverick, often at odds with Jedi tradition, but in death his influence continued to shape events in ways no one could have predicted. His discovery of Anakin Skywalker, his confrontation with Darth Maul, and his final request to Obi-Wan, all of it set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately determine the fate of the Jedi Order and the balance of the Force itself. Death is not the end. This truth, known to few in the galaxy, was something Qui-Gon Jinn had begun to discover long before his final encounter with Darth Maul. Throughout his life, Qui-Gon had been drawn to aspects of the Force that other Jedi often overlooked or dismissed. His interest in ancient prophecies was only the beginning, just one part of a deeper spiritual journey that would ultimately transcend even mortality itself. Before his final mission to Naboo, Qui-Gon had traveled to a world cloaked in mystery, a planet so strong with the Force that legends claimed it was the birthplace of life itself, and the origin of Midi-Chlorians there. He encountered 5 enigmatic beings known as the Force priestesses beings, who had achieved what seemed impossible. They had retained their conscious identity after physical death. From them, Qui-Gon learned a fundamental truth about the Force, one the Jedi Order had either forgotten or overlooked. The Force exists in 2 parts: the living Force, created by all living things in the moment, and the cosmic Force, the vast energy field that binds the galaxy together when beings die. Their life energy flows from the living Force into the cosmic Force, becoming one with everything. But the priestesses revealed something even more extraordinary, because these 2 aspects of the Force exist together. It is possible for one who is strong in the Force and possesses the right knowledge to retain their consciousness after death. The priestesses judged Qui-Gon to be worthy of this knowledge, and he secretly began his training to unlock its mysteries. He also sought wisdom from a shaman of the wills, who taught him that achieving eternal consciousness required absolute selflessness. One could not cling to identity out of fear or a desire for power. Only by completely surrendering to the Force could one, paradoxically, preserve their individual awareness within it. Tragically, Qui-Gon's training was not complete at the time of his death on Naboo, yet even that didn't stop him. Even in death, he found a way to reach back into the world of the living. Though he could not yet manifest physically as a Force spirit, he discovered how to communicate as a disembodied voice to those sensitive enough to hear him. 10 years after the events on Naboo, Qui-Gon made his first known attempt to reach across the divide. Anakin Skywalker, now a Jedi Padawan under Obi-Wan's tutelage, had returned to Tatooine, haunted by recurring nightmares about his mother. He found Shmi had been kidnapped by Tusken Raiders, and when she died in his arms, something inside Anakin snapped, consumed by rage and grief. He slaughtered the entire Tusken camp, feeling the terrible disturbance this created in the Force. Qui-Gon cried out to Anakin, begging him to listen to his better nature and not give in to hate. Even Master Yoda, meditating on Coruscant, could hear Qui-Gon's voice, though he didn't understand what it meant. Sadly, Anakin was too far gone to hear the warning. Later, he would tell himself that he had only imagined Qui-Gon's presence and willing to face what that moment truly revealed about his character. Shortly afterward, as the galaxy slid into war, Anakin returned to Qui-Gon's shrine on Naboo. In repentance for ignoring his words, he tried to connect again, and though he sensed nothing, he felt a sudden calm. Despite the growing darkness, he took it as a sign that Qui-Gon was telling him things could still be made right. It wasn't until the final days of the Clone Wars that Qui-Gon made another powerful connection with the living world. This time, he reached out to Yoda to know that the ancient Jedi Master was destined to play a crucial role in the coming storm. Qui-Gon guided Yoda to Dagobah, a planet strong in the living force. There, Yoda first heard Qui-Gon's voice, and could hardly believe it. Everything the Jedi had ever taught said death was final, but Qui-Gon explained how he had preserved his identity through the living force. Despite incomplete training under Qui-Gon's guidance, Yoda left Dagobah and journeyed to the homeworld of the Force priestesses, where he underwent trials to prove he was worthy of learning the secret. Yoda passed these trials, and the priestesses instructed him that Qui-Gon would be his teacher. This new knowledge would prove vital in the dark times to come, preserving a piece of the Jedi way even as the Republic crumbled and the Empire rose. During the Clone Wars, another strange event occurred. On the mysterious planet Mortis, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka were drawn into a realm of deep force, power home to three beings who believed Anakin was the chosen one. There, Qui-Gon appeared, first to Obi-Wan, warning him that the beings wanted to use Anakin for their own purposes. When Obi-Wan asked how this was even possible, Qui-Gon explained that Mortis acted as a conduit through which the Force flowed more purely. Later, Qui-Gon also appeared to Anakin, reaffirming his belief that the young Jedi would bring balance to the Force, though the Jedi later told themselves these visions must have been illusions. The truth was they had truly encountered Qui-Gon's consciousness, and the father of Mortis himself declared that Anakin was, indeed, the chosen one. After the fall of the Republic and the Jedi Order, Qui-Gon continued to reach the living, before going into exile on Dagobah. Yoda told Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon had returned from the netherworld of the Force and could guide him. But on Tatooine, Obi-Wan struggled. He often tried to reach Qui-Gon, spoke to him, pleaded, but heard no reply. What he didn't realize was that Qui-Gon was always there, but Obi-Wan couldn't see him not yet. His guilt over Anakin's fall blocked his perception. In 16 BBY, when young Luke was just 3 years, old Qui-Gon's voice finally warned Obi-Wan to protect the boy from a bandit raid on the Lars homestead, and years later, in 9 after Obi-Wan had faced Darth Vader again and finally come to terms with what Anakin had become, Qui-Gon finally appeared to his former Padawan. It happened as Obi-Wan rode toward Beggar's Canyon. Their reunion brought not just joy but peace. Qui-Gon told him, "I was always here. You just weren't ready to see." From then on, their connection grew stronger. Qui-Gon provided guidance during Obi-Wan's lonely years in the desert. When Kenobi faced the Wookiee bounty hunter Coruscant, he drew on his master for strength. In his final years, Obi-Wan completed the training Qui-Gon had still learning how to retain his consciousness after death, and when he sacrificed himself aboard the Death Star, allowing Darth Vader to strike him down so Luke could escape, Obi-Wan became one with the Force, just as Qui-Gon had taught Yoda to master the technique. When he died peacefully on Dagobah, He retained his identity thanks to Qui-Gon's teachings. These techniques, first discovered by Qui-Gon, would prove crucial in guiding Luke Skywalker toward his destiny to confront Vader and the Emperor. And the greatest vindication of Qui-Gon's belief came when Darth Vader turned against Palpatine, sacrificing himself to save Luke by killing the Emperor. Anakin fulfilled the prophecy. He brought balance to the Force. He destroyed the Sith, and in his final moments, Anakin found redemption and the path to retaining his consciousness in the Force. Qui-Gon's influence extended even to those who never knew him in life. Luke Skywalker, as he worked to rediscover the Jedi's forgotten history, learned of Qui-Gon's life, his bond with Obi-Wan, and the pivotal role he played in the Skywalker family's fate, though not related by blood. Qui-Gon's deep spiritual connection to the family led Luke to consider him part of the Skywalker legacy. Decades later, during the final battle on Exegol in 35 ABA, a young Jedi named Rey faced the resurrected Emperor Palpatine. In her darkest moment, she heard the voices of Jedi past lending her their strength. Among them was Qui-Gon Jinn. His voice told her that every Jedi who ever lived now lived within her, standing with her as she rose to face the darkness. This is perhaps Qui-Gon's greatest legacy, the understanding that death is not the end, that the Force connects all living things across time and space, that those who pass on remain with us guiding new generations. His belief in the living Force, his trust in its will over rigid dogma, and his discovery of consciousness beyond death, transformed what it meant to be a Jedi. The maverick who stood alone against the Council ultimately preserved the Jedi's wisdom through the darkest era in galactic history. The man who discovered the Chosen One made sure that prophecy would be fulfilled even if he did not live to see it. And the Master who taught Obi-Wan Kenobi never stopped teaching. In life, Qui-Gon Jinn followed his own path, guided by the living Force. In death, he transcended it, shaping destinies long after his body was gone. Through his discoveries, his teachings, and his enduring presence, Qui-Gon Jinn achieved a kind of immortality far more powerful than any Sith Lord's quest for eternal life could ever hope to attain.